Hello friends, Jeff here from Squadron. Welcome back into the next chapter of the F-14 build. I know it's been a while, but today we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to concentrate on the stabilizers and the tail fins. Also, we're going to do some prep work on the pylons. So let's get at it. So okay, first thing we're going to do is, as you can tell here, preparing the stabilizers and the tail fins, and then we can glue those on, and then after that we'll tackle the pylons. First of all, let me cut those loose. Shouldn't be that hard to do. And as I mentioned in my previous videos on the F-14, and most of you know by now, the kit is extremely well engineered, so you won't have any fit problems. It fits almost perfectly. It's like a drop-in, so that's not going to take long. Just have to clean them up a little bit on the edges, but other than that, just snap that thing together. For this we use a little medium sanding stick. The coarse sanding stick is maybe a little bit too much, so the medium is the way to go. So that way you can control it better and you don't take too much off. There's no risk. Another thing to have close at hand is the multi-functioning pad or an abrasive pad. What it actually does is whenever you cut some stuff or you have to remove some carrier points or you have to sand some stuff down, there's always a little bit of residue, there's a bit of dust, a little bit of membranes here and there. So if you go over it real quick, it takes all that off and it becomes really smooth and there's nothing, absolutely no residue left. It doesn't have to necessarily be a big piece like this. You can either use a small corner, just something that you can really pick up and just go over it, and that's all you need to do. I also like to work with Tamiya plastic, not only because of the quality of their product or their subjects, but also the plastic itself. It's a better grade plastic than you will find in other kits, in other brand names. It's not too soft, it's not too hard, it's just right. I mean, it cuts right, it sands right, and it doesn't leave any film or anything. So I really like to build a Tamiya kit, to be very honest. Put a plastic cement around the edges. Look at the nice fit. I don't know if you can really tell, but it's really a tight fit in there. There's almost no seam. You don't have to do anything else, just lay it in there and it will line up perfectly. Let's do the other side. Test fit this just for see how it looks. Look at that. It's perfectly engineered. Now let's do the tail fins. It's the same scenario. I mentioned this in other videos, the use of this premium sprue nipper. Well, there are two kinds of sprue nippers. One is a regular one, and it will work too. I'm not saying that, but the premium one is more like an ergonomic kind of a tool, and the I'm gonna call it the beak here. It's a little bit more narrow, smaller, so you can get into more tight places, and it also will cut a little bit closer to the edge. You can make a really razor sharp snip without running the problem into getting into the plastic or to warp something or twist something. Because sometimes when you get into places and you close the snippers, the plastic will expand, and sometimes you even damage the edge here. So for nice kits like Tamiya kits or anything else, sometimes with fine, delicate detail, it's good to invest in a premium snipper just for peace of mind, because it goes a lot easier. My English is not working. I had a lot of problems this week. You would think after a while English you get better and better and better, but it's not the case. I mean, if that's your second language, there are really days that sucks. Can't come up with the words. Another good thing is that Tamiya, in this case, engineered it in such a way that you have no seams, because sometimes when you deal with tail fins or stabilizers, you have two components, two parts, and you have to glue those together, and then you have a seam. Also, most of the time they're too thick. If it consists out of two parts, like a left and a right, they cannot make it as thin as then when they fabricate it out of one piece, like in this case. So this is more like an inlay, as you can tell. It's more like a fine inlay, and you have no seam whatsoever on both sides. And also, when you look at it real straight, it's absolutely very narrow and true to the real airplane. It's the small details that makes them stand out. But in this case, I mean, it's absolutely fabulous how they really thought this kit through in engineering it. I'm using a sanding stick here, a medium. If you don't have any sanding sticks close or anything, sandpaper will just work as fine. For the ones that might question what I'm using here, this is our Squadron plastic weld, SQ9070. The reason it looks a little gray is that I rinsed one of my brushes in there as far as working with putty, so it discolored a little, and also I peeled the label off, so it's just the Squadron plastic weld. Sometimes I can be a little sloppy, so if I need something to rinse my brushes, I use my glue. Especially when you work with putty. Plastic weld will also dilute our putty. So the Squadron putty, if you're looking for a way to dilute it a little bit, plastic will work just fine. If you prefer to use super glue on these things, you can do that. That will, of course, speed up the process. I like to, especially the main components, I like to glue with plastic weld or plastic cement, because then it really fuses the plastic together, while super glue just makes a film in between. Now the super glue will also dry faster and become harder, so you can use it as a putty. And once you put those two things together and you have a seam, you can start sanding faster. Now the plastic weld differentiates itself a little bit from plastic cement, that it dries faster. It's also a little bit more tricky to apply it, because sometimes it's enough from when you take it out of the bottle and you transport it to your piece here, then by the time you get here and you go back to do another layer, it's already dried up. So it dries pretty fast. So I'm pretty confident that after maybe 20-30 minutes I can start sanding this and it will all be dry. But again, if you like to use super glue in these instances, go right ahead, it will work just as fine. Since it's such a perfect fit, as you can tell, there's absolutely no seam here. You might, in a way, think about maybe leaving those things off. It will also help you in masking or airbrushing, that you don't have to bump into those things and you can paint them while they're separate. For the tail fins, it might not be a big idea or great idea, because eventually when you glue them in place, if you like to use plastic cement, you might damage the paint, but I'm sure if you tack it with super glue, there will be no problem at all. And it also will be easier to paint them. The stabilizers themselves, they're no problem. You can just paint these separately and just plug them in. You don't even have to glue them into position. You just have to plug them in there in any kind of position you want to. Might be a good idea to keep those things separate. I don't know yet what I'm going to do. I might glue them in place, or we'll see. So far I'm going to put these on the side for a little bit until they can dry, and then I can only sand this little part here on both. These are completely done, so you don't have to worry about these. You can put those on the side. I'll come back maybe probably 20 minutes and just give it a little sanding there, and that will be, they're good to go. Meanwhile, we're going to look at the ornament and the pylons. The plan is eventually to mount as many rockets and bombs and all that that I can possibly do, because I like an airplane, and especially a Tomcat, I like it when it's fully loaded. So I'm already going to prepare these pylons here. I'm going to start with here, and because that's always the bad part of building a jet or a modern jet. There's a lot of ordnance that you can use, but they also come with a lot of parts, a lot of components, and in this case a lot of pylon. Let's tackle those. Let's see if we can mount as much as possible. We start with the biggest ones here. A lot of models, myself included, we're always so focused on building the kit itself that we sometimes do not pay a lot of attention to the accessories like the pylons, because it's a boring thing to clean those up and to glue them and to sand all the seams and all. But nothing looks better than when you pay attention to the ordnance, because it will catch the eye. Once you're done sanding it, priming it, painting it, decaling it, if it's done right and you spend some extra time in cleaning those things up it really looks fantastic when you look at a model and everything is in place. So in this case, I'm going to pay a lot of attention to the ordnance and the way I'm cleaning it up. I'm not going to cut any corners on this, especially since it's such a beautiful engineered kit. It really screams for extra attention. Well, before I can do this one, I need to mount the forward fuselage, so I'll keep that off for later. However, these ones, they're going in the back, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I forgot to drill some holes in there. So I need to do that. I can already see that I overlooked the fact that I have to drill a couple, or pre-drill a couple holes. I'm sure on the other side, on the inside of the plastic, there will be some holes that I need to push through, but I didn't get that. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Hope I don't drill in the wrong spot. I can still, if I hold it to the light, I can still see where those holes need to be, so let me try that. What I did forget, as I mentioned before, I forgot to pre-drill the holes here for the pylons. So if you decide to mount the pylons and add weapons, then you need to pre-drill these holes, and they're marked on the inside. I didn't catch that, I didn't think about it, so when I glued the fuselage together, now I'm a little bit in the dark here, but I can see, if I hold it to the light, I can see the indentations, and even if I misdrill a little bit, it's no big deal, because these things will cover the holes up anyway, or any mistake I make. So I'm just gonna drill the hole. I think I'm right there, and then there should be another one here. Yeah, I think so. So let's make them a little bit bigger. Yeah, that worked out perfect. So again, no big deal. So if you forget it, just hold it to the light a little bit, and you can see faintly the spots where you have to put your drill, and just turn it a few times and it will immediately pop through. Let me do this on the last one here. Worst case scenario, if you're a little afraid of doing that and you still forget, you can also cut these knobs off. Just make them flush, put them in place. Because actually, when you look at the instruction sheet, you can easily see where they have to go. So again, don't panic, no big deal. I think I forgot the ones in the front too. Need to do that. So we got the main pylons here, and now we can look for the smaller ones. Okay, those are D8 and D5. One of the previous videos I also mentioned some of the parts are very delicate and have a fine tip or an exquisite point here, and try not to damage that. You need to keep the crispness of the part here. As you see, it's a very extremely sharp point and very clean, so Try not to compromise that by grabbing it here or putting it down and try to cut something off. Try to work around that. It's very important that those stay on. Whenever you mount it to the airplane, you need to have an absolutely perfect transition between the pylon and the fuselage. And they're easily broken if you don't pay attention. And I'm sure you keep noticing there's absolutely hardly any cleanup necessary. Just remove it from the sprue, slice the excess a little off, and then just go over it very slightly with the sanding stick, and there you go. Good to have these pylons aligned, although it's well explained in the instruction sheet that once you start cutting or removing the parts from the sprue, there is a left side, as you can tell here, left side and right side. You might forget that, so it's better to do the whole sequence and then do the right side. So we start with the left, build it all up, and then start with the right, because sometimes, and again I do this regularly, is that I try to cut everything off the sprue, and then at the end I don't know which one is left and which one is right. So in this case especially, take good care or pay attention to the left side and the right side, and because all these parts look alike. Start with the upper one here and build the whole sequence, and then put it on the side, and then you know that you get the right parts with the right side. Else you're going to be confused and it will take maybe a little bit to figure it out. I didn't do that, so now I'm trying to figure out which one is left and which one is right. Step 31 is a little confusing, so you really have to take extra care in mating up the parts. I think I got it right. Hope. I just wanted to point out something, and stupid me, I didn't catch that. But apparently you can make 3 versions. I thought I had to assemble them all, but I'm gonna go with the first and the third version, but I caught it here. I was building these things and I really didn't pay attention of what kind of pylons needed to be mounted on the other pylons, and I couldn't figure it out until I realized when I turned the page over. It's one of 3 configurations. So not to make the same mistake like me, and again, my intelligence is not all that great, so don't worry about it. It's just me. So before you start your build, you already have to figure out what kind of version you're gonna make. I didn't do that. As I mentioned before, I was really distracted by everything, so it took me about 50 minutes to figure this out, and this is embarrassing, but hey, it is what it is. So before you start, make sure that you pick out your ordnance, that you pick out the pylons, and that you decide on what version you want to represent. And it's easy to see when you go to the following pages. You can actually see where the pylons go and which configurations is attached to what version. Also in the back, when you look, Tamiya really explained all the 3 configurations with the appropriate ornament. I'm gonna go with the first version here, since I already drilled the holes in the back there. I shouldn't have done that either, but I did that, so I'm going to utilize those. So I am stuck with version number 1, which is actually not a big deal because I like all the Phoenix and the Sidewinders together with the Sparrow. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to stick with version 1. So all that's left to do, is to just do the pylons and put the drop tanks together. And then we got everything figured out. Clean up the little seams, it's no big deal. I think the glue is dry enough. This one. It's hardly necessary. Also, before I forget, remember the tail fins. That's a thing that you easily forget because it's very insignificant, it's very small, and once you glue those things together, there's still a little tiny seam to take care of. So if you don't take care of it now, it might bite you in the butt when you're ready to airbrush and you can see there's still a little seam that you need to clean up. Let's do that now, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, now the other one. There you go. We got all these ready. And all these done. All cleaned up. And now it just leaves me... Oh yeah, that's right. Before I forget, I need to do one more of these. This is what happens when you don't do your homework and you rush it. That's gonna of course cost extra work when making some extra Phoenix rockets. Since I drilled those 2 holes in here, remember? 2 ones here. I shouldn't even have done that, but I did it anyway. So now I'm gonna utilize those pylons. So I'm gonna have 4 pylons, 2 pylons in the front and 2 in the back. That's gonna, it's gonna look cooler, but it's just a little bit more work. So instead of plugging up the holes, I've decided to go ahead and mount these 2. All will be fine in the end. I got those 4 done. Now I'm gonna look at the drop tanks. It's like to do 2 and 2 little pylons, and then I think we got everything covered as far as pylons for all the ordnance and the weapons. So once we get that out of the way, then the fun would start, and we finally can make the final assembly and we can start painting. So let's quickly glue those drop tanks together. Be very gentle in cleaning those up, because you definitely don't want to go into the plastic on a drop tank, because then you have to, because of the round shape, you don't want to compromise that, so be patient with that. Again, it's really very nice fit. There's almost no seam or any distortion to speak of, but in this case it would be good if you have a little bit tape available. Just any masking tape will help. Once you glue them together, that you put at least a little tiny bit of tape around it to hold them in place. Another thing I would like to mention is the use of a scalpel. We're all familiar with the X-Acto blade, the number 11, and the difference between an X-Acto knife and a scalpel is that an X-Acto knife is a lot harder. The knife is really more hardened, and also it's more pointy. Now, it's also doesn't cut as well as a scalpel. Now, a scalpel blade is a little bit softer, so it wears out a lot faster. But it's also more appropriate to use when cutting something off because you can easily slice it off, and it cuts better into the plastic. But like I said, it also wears out a lot faster. But to cut plastic or to clean plastic like this or to scrape, I prefer to use a scalpel. So here we have it. I'll come back later and sand these. So I can't take the tape off right now, but I'm sure you all get the picture. So far we did all the preparation of the pylons. In next chapter we'll come back and we'll tackle the ornament itself. We make the selection, we're gonna put all the rockets together. It's a whole bunch, but I'm gonna take my time for it, and I'm gonna go with the first configuration. We got everything lined up, and then when we come back we'll do the rockets. After working on it again, I feel really motivated to finish the F-14 project. It's been going on for a while, but I'm back in the zone. So next chapter, we'll tackle the ornament. When that's done, then it's going to be the final assembly. And after that, that's when the real fun begins. It's painting and weathering. But up till then, that's it for now, guys. Jeff E here, signing off. If you like what we have to say and you want to see more of this, please subscribe to Squadron TV or make your friends subscribe, or even your puppy. You can also follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. I know it's been a while that shut up. The real fun will start, which is painting I would say the damn thing.